Isn't religion based on faith and not on proof? Well, yes, but let's define those two terms.
Right off the bat, we have an attempt to disingenuously define terms. It's like an unholy union between special pleading and a straw man argument. And so we're going to be spending a lot of this video just calling BS on that and explaining why. Let's do this.
Round 1, fight!
Delusion!
Logic boo! Logic boo!
You win!
Greetings, fellow space travelers, BionicDance here. One of the biggest arguments between atheists and theists is on the definition of the word faith. And while it's true that the definition preferred by most outspoken atheists is quite unflattering to theists, it's not just plucked out of the air, but rather based on observation of what believers are actually doing. They can protest all they like, but the most likely scenario is that they know their position is indefensible and are scrambling to cover the gaping holes in their logic.
Some people think proof means that you show them something is true without any possibility of doubt.
I don't know who is using that definition, but I sure wouldn't, because I say we need to prove things beyond a reasonable doubt. Of course, I could probably do a whole video on what is or is not a reasonable doubt, but I'd only have to because some people will pretend they don't know, demand an explanation, and after a rather long-winded multiple rabbit hole description of reasonable doubt, they'll just say nuh-uh anyway. It seems like most people, atheists and theists alike, know perfectly well what reasonable doubt is, right up until the topic is religion. At that point, the theist will suddenly forget everything they ever knew on the topic, because to do otherwise would place upon them a burden of proof that they know they could never meet. And don't tell me that's not true. I've been around the block long enough to have seen it over and over.
But if that's the case, guess what? We can't prove anything.
You also can't spell prove like that unless you want to be really, really wrong.
I mean, anything can be doubted. Does the phone you're listening to this on exist? Yeah? Prove it.
Can anything be doubted? Sure. Should everything be doubted? Well, I guess. But within the bounds of reason. Phones aren't magical, universe-creating beings or long-haired hippies who came back to life after committing suicide by Roman. Believing your phone is real isn't some earth-shattering thing that, if so, will shake the very foundations of our understanding of the universe. The existence of your God, however, well, that's gonna take some convincing. Also, check it. Custom BionicDance pop socket. How cool is that? Huh?
Maybe it's just an illusion, created by aliens. Maybe your phone is an alien, from the planet Cybertron, that can transform into various mechanical objects. Now, you have a lot of evidence to suggest that those things aren't the case, but you can't prove this 100%. There is always a possibility, however slight, that what you think is a proven fact is actually something different.
I mean, yeah, that's basically what I'm saying. But the part about reasonable doubt is dishonestly left out. And no, they didn't just not think of it. As you're about to see, this omission is central to their argument.
Okay, now let's take the word faith. People think faith is some blind leap. You gotta throw out your mind and then just believe, even if it's irrational. That's not faith. Faith is trust. It's putting your trust in what you have good reason to believe is true. Just like the evidence of the phone in your hand is enough for you to trust that it's really there.
Let me play part of that for you again.
Faith is trust. It's putting your trust in what you have good reason to believe is true.
Well, what if you believe something without good reason to think it's true? Is that not blind faith? Of course it is. And the proposition of a magical sky wizard who created all of reality comes with what evidence that gives us good reason to think he's real? Pretty much none at all. We have a book that tells us about him, a book from thousands of years ago that is riddled with contradictions and long debunked scientific and historical claims. If you believe that, you've thrown reason out the window, and your faith is blind.
Wait a minute, what about atheists? They don't have to rely on faith because they're not religious, right? So wouldn't that seem more logical? Well, the term atheist simply means that someone doesn't have faith in God. So by definition, they don't have faith in that one area, but they do have faith in every other area in their life, at least in the things they do believe in. Faith or trust is not merely a religious concept.
And this is why faith and trust aren't the same thing. Ask any outspoken atheist and they'll refuse to use the term because it comes with a lot of baggage. Ask any outspoken atheist and they'll tell you that they're a skeptic, where most Christians will tell you that blind faith is not merely a virtue, but actually a requirement to get into heaven. They'll tell you that God remains unseen to test us, that faith is, what's that quote again? The substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. That's from their own book, Hebrews 11:1. Ask a skeptic whether that's the paradigm they use in order to begin trusting something. They'll probably tell you that it's the exact opposite of their process for trusting a proposition.
So an atheist who believes that the universe was created through natural causes alone has to have faith or trust in the evidence that leads him to that conclusion. He has to trust in the science books and the professors that taught him that evidence.
Except that atheists don't have to do that. Testing the truth value of what other people say is built right into science. Did you really never take a science class in school? They tell you how things work and then, as often as not, would hand you all of the materials you need to run your own experiment, be it chemical reactions, dissecting frogs, shooting lasers at things, or whatever. We don't have to just take it on their say-so. We're even not supposed to. That's the point. Does religion provide us with these opportunities to test its claims? Nope. We're just told to have faith in the holy texts and sermons, to believe what is said by religious authorities. In other words, blind-ass faith. And is it possible that I'm just a brain in a vat or a computer simulation experiencing an artificial reality? I suppose. But is it reasonable to think so? Not really. Not without some darn good evidence, because, again, that would be a world-shaking, paradigm-shifting, egad this changes everything discovery. And so it requires quite a lot of evidence before believing it starts to become reasonable. Just like the existence of a god. The evidence just isn't there, and when we point that out, we're told to have faith and to Hades with those pesky facts.
But what's the big deal if I have faith in Jesus, or Buddha, or Joseph Smith, or science? What's the difference? Okay, look, this is huge. What you put your faith in is the most important question. If I'm drowning and I see somebody on the shore and I call out to them and say, "Save me!" and I put my faith in this person and this person doesn't know how to swim, they can't save me. Doesn't matter how strong my faith is, the person I put my faith in is the key.
But what if you're not drowning? What if you just want to find out whether something is true or if something exists? And why is the example about trusting a person? This is just a way to reframe the topic away from the fact that there is zero evidence for God's existence. But even this example is flawed within itself. Whether we believe a person can save us from drowning or not, we believe that the person is there because the evidence for their existence is overwhelming. We see them, we can interact with them. It's more than reasonable to think that that human being exists in the first place. Can they save us? Maybe, maybe not. But we know someone is there to maybe try. The claims that Jesus or God can save us are 100% irrelevant until we know that they're even real in the first place. Why would I call out for help to someone I quite reasonably think is almost certainly imaginary, a legend, a fairy tale, a remnant of an age when science was in its infancy compared to today, and people believed some really wacky things that we now know to be false? Which of those is reasonable? Magical Sky Daddy or Campfire Story?
If I put my faith in the lifeguard by not fighting him when he swims out to save me, well then he can save me. The Bible says that we are drowning. We are drowning in the evil of this world and the evil in our hearts.
Oh, well if the Bible says so, so what? Why should I believe the Bible? That book says a lot of things that, frankly, it's quite unreasonable to believe. You gotta stop trying to use what the Bible says as some sort of slam dunk, because I already don't believe it. The Bible doesn't prove itself. It's the claim, not the evidence, not the argument for its own truth. And when I say that to a Christian, what am I told? Right, I'm told to have faith, to believe an unreasonable position without extraordinary evidence to back it up. I'm not gonna do that, because that level of blind faith is unreasonable. The reason to believe or disbelieve something, the level to which we agree to do either one, is not a binary set, not an on-off switch. It's really a scale of credulity and incredulity. On the one hand, there are those who never believe anything, the sticks in the mud, the naysayers. On the other end, there are those who believe absolutely everything with blind faith, like conspiracy theorists, or theists whose zealotry has reached weapons-grade levels. I would say I'm about here on that gradient, and I suspect most atheists aren't too far from there either. When someone presents to us a hypothesis that is pretty out there, we're going to take a lot of convincing. But we're not just saying nuh-uh. Whereas most theists seem to be way the heck over here. And even more strangely, mostly only there when it comes to their religion. They'll still touch the wall to see if the paint's dry, and they won't believe a word said by insurance reps or the used car salesman. I couldn't tell you why for certain, but I suspect that's because they really want God to be real for mostly emotional reasons. Again, I can't prove that, because they obviously know their own minds better than I do, but based on what I see and hear from them, it's not an unreasonable guess. And that's far more concession than I've ever seen from a theist with regard to an atheist position on the topic of religion's truth.
The Bible also gives us evidence that the only lifeguard who can save us is named Jesus. So by putting our faith in him, we are putting our faith in the only person who chose to come down to earth and pull us up out of the water himself.
But it doesn't give us evidence of that. It just says it. Give me a way to reasonably test whether your God exists and Jesus is the fruit of his celestial loins. Give me a way to make faith unnecessary because we have data which can be checked. Give me an experiment to run that is not 100% in my own head. Then and only then will I ever suspect that you're not talking straight out of your butt. Until next time, fellow space travelers, this is BionicDance saying don't run on automatic. Instead, please think. Right off the bat, we have an attempt to first fucking line. But the most likely scenario is that they know their position is indefensible and are scrambling to cover the holes in their logic. Ask any outspoken atheist and they'll tell you that they're... Oops. Not without some really good evidence, because, again, that would be a shaking.
Attention citizens. Failure to contribute will result in suspended oxygen privileges. Attention citizens. Failure to contribute will result in suspended oxygen privileges. Attention citizens.
Not rating and subscribing has been found to cause obesity, acne, and male pattern baldness in laboratory rats.
Yeah, whatever.
Don't let this happen to you. Be sure to rate and subscribe.